Welcome back to another VBA video. So it's been a while since we've covered pretty much anything in VBA, and so I wanted to make sure that particular language was not left to the side, because I know a lot of people on this channel do enjoy the VBA series. So I wanted to kind of cover a couple different topics, and kind of continuing with the theme of the channel is I don't really like covering topics that you can kind of find anywhere else. I like covering the topics that are interesting and complicated, and the ones that aren't covered, I would say, as frequently. So in today's video, we are going to talk about how to work with templates, so Word document templates, using, you guessed it, Word VBA. So for the most part, I'm assuming most people understand what a template is inside of Word. But if you go here, for example, and you're in your little thing and you just opened up a new document, whatever you want to call it, you will see up here there are all these wonderful templates that you can use. And then if you actually click here, there's more templates, and you can look for things like calendars, resumes, you name it. Usually there's a template for it, and then there's also an online component as well. So really cool. It does save you a lot of time when you're creating new documents. You don't want to have to start from scratch. You can just use a template and you're good to go. Now, to the surprise of some people, they're kind of like, oh, you can actually manipulate these templates. Yes, you can. In fact, Word makes it very easy to manipulate these templates. And we're going to see, this is actually a multi-part series where we're going to work with the template object. But what we're going to find is that a template is really just, I'd say, almost like a collection of just these building blocks. At least that's how Word VBA defines them. But these building blocks are different things. They can be things like, your name in a particular section of the document. So how we've, inserted certain fields inside of our Word document, and we want to be able to have those automatically update every time a new user goes into it. We can think of those as the building blocks. And so that's kind of for the next portion of this series, but right now we're going to just kind of work with the high level stuff, which is a template on its own. So with that being said, we do need to go into our Visual Basic editor. So you want to make sure you go to the Developer tab on the ribbon. And then if you go all the way over here, you'll see the Visual Basic icon, and you can just click that. And then now, as you can see, we are in the Visual Basic editor. So the first thing we want to do is create a new subroutine. We'll call it Working with Templates. And so you can kind of think of this first one as just, seeing how you grab them, seeing where they're located, getting some information about it, nothing super complicated. So the first thing we do need to do is we need to make sure we declare our variables. So a lot of times, I'll see people kind of write VBA code and they'll just declare everything as an object. There is a huge object model there that exists, and so we need to take advantage of it. So we're going to create our first variable. It's going to be called Word Templates, and this is going to be the templates, if I can type, the templates collection. Now, we've seen this many times before inside of VBA. A collection is simply a group of similar objects. So in this case, the templates collection contains multiple template, so individual, drop the S, objects. Next, we're going to do another variable. So we're going to call this one Word Template. And you guessed it, is a template object. And I do want to create a reference to the active document. So we will create a new variable called Word Doc, and that will represent a document object inside the Word application. So for those of you who might be coming from Excel, you can think of the document as like the workbook, right? So there's this hierarchy, just like there is in Excel, we have it in Word. In Word, we have the application, we have document, and then you have paragraph, or no, maybe it's section, paragraph, and then I think it's like sentence word and stuff like that, or basically it's range, but you'll kind of find you can actually go much lower. But that's at least, high level what's going on. Okay, so now that we've done that, the first thing we need to do is grab the current document. Technically, it's the active document, but I'll show you. You can actually, so if you do Control J, you'll see active document. Now, technically, there is something similar to this workbook. So for example, if I do this document, you will be able to reference the document that houses this code. Now, you got to be a little bit careful because there's two of them, and I have not found a good reason as to why there are two of them. My assumption is it has something to do with the projects that we have open, possibly. I'm not sure. From what I can tell, it seems like if you choose either one of them, it doesn't seem to matter, but I usually just pick the first one to be consistent. And from what I can tell, I guess the first one is representing the actual document that you're currently writing the code in. So just an FYI if you were curious. Okay, now technically templates exist in many different parts, to say the least. I'll kind of show you. There are, I don't want to be confusing. That's the only thing, but we'll keep it just like it is right now. Okay, we'll just keep it the way it is. At the high level, so at our application level, there is a templates collection, right? And so if we want all the templates that we currently have in our Word application, we probably should go there. You got to be a little bit careful though, because let me explain. Let me just show it to you. Just because you see it here doesn't mean it's technically existing yet. What do I mean by that? Well, until you physically open that document one time, it's never officially been downloaded to your folder. And if it's never been officially downloaded, guess what? It doesn't technically exist in the templates collection. So it's a little bit misleading. You would think like, oh, I would just be able to get all the templates. You can't. You actually have to physically open it once because that downloads it, and then it will store it in a very particular folder that we'll get to in a second, but it will actually store it there and you can access those templates there. So for right now, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to take the templates collection at the application level. So grab the templates collection at the application level. Okay, so hopefully I didn't confuse anybody at this point. We are going to set our Word templates object variable. We'll call our application object. Now, technically, you don't have to do this. You could just do templates because you can think of it as a global, I guess as part of the global object. At least that's what it shows in the Word documentation. But right now, what we've now done is we've kind of grabbed all the templates that currently exist in our application. Now we have a collection, so normally what do we do with collections? We loop through them, right? So loop through each template in the collection. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say for each Word template in Word templates, next. Oh, geez, can't type. Well, what am I saying? I can't type any night. I've been doing this for months, so at this point, it's just me. All right, print some details. So we're gonna print some details about each template object, right? And so again, this is really, I just use it as more informative. So for example, we have a template name. We'll say, okay, we'll take our Word template. If you do control, IntelliSense isn't working. So usually if it's not working, I know something's wrong. Word template. Ah, I misspelled it, that's why. I've gotten good about this. Okay, so if you do Control J, it will bring up your IntelliSense, and you can kind of see right here, for the most part, almost all of it is just properties, so just information about that particular object. There are a few methods. So for example, you can open a Word template as a document, so just a traditional Word document, and you can also save your templates. But say for example, I want to see the name, right? So I want to see the name of my template. Well, I would just call the name property and I would print it out. Something that's very useful is we want to know the path. right? We want to know where this template is located because it will actually be different on every person's computer. Now, different in the sense of it uses your own personal information, like your username, in order to is basically part of the file path. And so because of that, it's going to be different technically on every single person's system. So if we do the path, we'll see in a second, it kind of actually changes a little bit. Okay, and then we have a template full name. You'll kind of see it's just kind of combining two different pieces of information, but you'll see it's nothing super crazy. Okay, and then also, if you're kind of just curious, like, hey, I want to see, other pieces about it, right? Something it's actually really interesting is technically every template is its own VB project, so Visual Basic project. So you can actually access that Visual Basic project component from the actual object itself. Now, I have a whole series about working with the VB project components and stuff like that. So it is interesting. I haven't really found a use case per se, but it's interesting that you can access that. That's actually one of the only objects I think I've ever encountered that actually has a VB project component to it. So very interesting. Again, haven't found much of a use case for it, but it's kind of neat to know it's there. It kind of opens up the door to what else would you want to do, right? Okay, so now that we've done that, let's print everything out. And you can see right now, I only have 2 templates available. I will explain why this one is available for me, because I'm going to be assuming that most of you do not have this. So most of you, when you run this, you might have, you're going to have this one, and you might have 2 other ones depending on particularly what object you chose. Now, again, just for me to be, I guess, a little bit paranoid, I could run this again on that second applications object, and we could see if potentially maybe there's something different, right? You see, there's really nothing different. So this is kind of where I was like, okay, does it actually change or not change? It doesn't seem to change. So for the most part, I'm happy with it. But at this point, our templates collection does have 2 template objects. The first one is called report.dotx, and the second one is normal.dotm, so a macro-enabled, macro-enabled document. So very interesting stuff, and technically, you'll see here the name is just the file name, and then the path is where this file is located at, and this is the part I was saying it changes. So obviously Alex is unique to me. I mean, I'm sure if another Alex is out there, it would be the same, but for this part, this is unique to me, and the full name is simply combining the path and the name, and it provides the same thing. So if you're curious and you're saying like, hey, what's going on here? What's at this wonderful folder, right? Well, you could look at it. I want to open up a new window. This is my textbook collection. Perfect. All right. So if you go into this wonderful oh geez, don't like that. If you go into your users folder, you go to the user, so yourself, you go to app data, roaming, Microsoft, and templates, you will see all the templates that Microsoft can see. So everything here is basically a template that is for a different Office application. So you see some are for PowerPoint, some are for Word, some are for Excel. I'm sure if I opened up Publisher or some other Office application, then we would have different types. So anytime Microsoft is looking for templates, it's looking in this particular folder. Now, here's the thing though. Just because it's in this folder does not mean, and I'm going to repeat this, does not mean it's part of your Word templates collection. It's misleading, I know. You would think, oh, if it's in this folder, it should be in that collection. Well, here's proof that it's not. This is a particular template. This is definitely not in my Word templates collection. In fact, there's other ones too. So, well, report is, and then, well, that one's on a template, so that doesn't count. But basically what I'm trying to say is there is a template here, but we're not seeing it in our collection. Why is that? Well, it's because we haven't installed it in our Word application. And then this is where things get a little bit weird. It's not weird, but it's just different. And me personally, when I've worked with VBA, I've never kind of had to encounter this before. But if we want this template, for example, to be permanently part of the Word application, and I use permanently loosely because it's not really doing that, but let me say this. If we want our template to always exist in the application.templates collection every time we open up an instance of Word, we can do that, but we have to install it. And you're kind of going, what do you mean install it, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. What I mean by installing it is we're going to treat it as an add-in. And if we treat it as an add-in, then we can add that add-in or that template to our add-ins collection. And then so every time we start up Word, it will be there. Now, we can do this programmatically through VBA. If I was going to do it non-programmatically, so manually, there's a couple different ways you can do it. So you can either go to your developer tab and you can go to Word add-ins. So this little icon right here, the one with the gear. And if you click it, you will see templates and add-ins. And so we'll see in a second, but every document has an attached template. So this is the one that is currently part of it. Now, I programmatically changed it to not be the normal one, so not the default one. I actually changed it to one I wanted to. We're going to see how to change this using VBA. But you can also see here that these are ones that are currently loaded. Now, if you click here, for example, and you were to add it, you can actually, if you check it, then it will be currently loaded and will be part of what you call your global templates. And what we mean by global is that, again, anytime you use Word, it will be part of your templates collection. So that by enabling that one, so this one right here, hopefully we can see it. Oh, look at that. We now have a new VB project. Now, you can't view those projects because they are a template, but that's how you know you've just added it to your global templates collection. So again, that was manually doing it. We can also do it programmatically, but it does have one very particular caveat. It does assume that the template currently exists in that folder. So for example, if I was to continue this process, and let's just say I tried to add one that I saw on here, right? So I go to my little template one and I look and I say, oh, I really like this snapshot calendar one. And I try adding it as my template. Guess what? It's technically not in that folder. So it will not be, we cannot basically add it to our global collection. So what we'll do here is I'll just open up a random one. You can actually see right here, download size. So it's telling you it has to download it. So it's not physically on your system yet. But when you click create, it will download a copy of it for you. And so now we have this nice little template, it looks great. And if I go into my templates folder, I should see, where is it? Sometimes it's not there. I'll do this. I'm gonna close it. We don't need to save it right now. Well, that's odd. It happened this morning. Of course it doesn't work. Let's try it again. Let me do this. Actually, let me do that again, but I'm gonna try something different because naturally it never works second time, right? I'll just double check and make sure that's not there right now. It does not appear to be. We'll do this. Let's just temporarily save this and just see what happens, right? So maybe if we save it, it will fix everything, right? And so we'll just say my test. My test. Hopefully that fixes it. If not, that's a shame. The other thing that it could be too, if I'm thinking about it, because I know some templates are different than other ones, so not all of them are technically the same. Some of them actually will be a little bit different. So for example, let me open up a new document and see what happens if I do that. Okay, resume. Okay, so it downloaded it, that's fine. Odd. Now, we'll just assume it is. I'm not really sure why that is. This morning, it was interesting. It actually downloaded a physical copy. Now this one seems like it's not. Why that's the case? Your guess is as good as mine. But for right now, let's just assume everything's still kind of working the same. I'll probably add to the documentation somewhere down here kind of why that is. I'm probably gonna have to just do some more research to understand kind of what happened, but it was working this morning, so very odd. Okay, well, we'll see if this works. Hopefully it does work. I think it should, and we'll see what happens. Let's just say programmatically, we wanted to add a template to our global collection. How do we go about doing that? Well, we're just gonna have to declare some more variables. So declare some more variables. I know, fancy comment, right? And we're gonna work with the word add-ins collection. And so this will be the add-ins collection object. Again, there are two of them, don't ask why. And then from here, we are going to do word add-in, and then this will be our add-in object. So again, I did do a series a while back, at least for the Excel one, that showed us how to work with the add-ins collection. So things like, you know, you have a custom add-in that you want to install, but you want to do it programmatically, you can actually do that using VBA. So very neat tool. In this case, we are actually going to be using it with Word, but we're going to be using it for template purposes. So the first thing we need to do is grab the add-in collection. And that's not too bad for the most part. We're just going to set our word add-ins object variable equal to our application. And then we're going to do add-ins, right? So once we've done that, we can loop through each add-in. So we can say for each word add-in, in word add-ins, next. I'm gonna go down a little bit, perfect. Let's see what we wanna do. It's fine, we'll just type it out again. We will say add-in name equals word add-in dot name. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. We just want to see the name of our add-in. There's a couple other things that might be interested in. So for example, path, we might want to see where the path of our add-in is. And so that's kind of nice to know sometimes. And then also we have an add-in installed flag. And so with installed, obviously if it's installed, then it means that it's basically loaded. We've installed this particular add-in so we can access it, right? And so again, if we go in here, we can see installed. And then there's some other things too. So you can do like auto load, compiled. Again, this is just more information. It's not really doing anything at this point. It's just more for information purposes. But at this point, we just want to know if it's installed or not. And then obviously with your add-ins collection, you can, you guessed it, add add-ins. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to print that information out, but I'm going to put my little line break. At least my attempt at a line break. All right, and let's see what we get. Ooh, lordy, something happened. Oh, I have to convert it to a string, that's why. It is, I think it's a Boolean if I remember correctly. Sometimes it's Boolean and then sometimes it's long. Yeah, okay, perfect. So these ones are the ones that are currently installed. And so you can see here, disregard these ones because that was the old one. Right now we have our Blue Spheres appointment calendar one. So that was the one I manually installed. Now, the other one I actually uninstalled by unclicking it in a sense. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this one and we'll add it back in, right? So we already have the path. And so I'll show you, we can take that path and then just manually add it in. Now, I have been kind of researching if there is a way to do it from that folder. I mean, I know there's a way to do it. I just thought there was a more intuitive way of doing it. I didn't think you would have to do all these things like going to that directory and stuff like that. So I think there's an easier way. That's just my guess, and I'm missing something, but you can do it programmatically. I mean, you can definitely write a script that can do it. I know you can, but I'm trying to see if there's more of like a built-in functionality before kind of adding all that extra complexity to the equation. Okay, so let's assume that we want to add this template to our global collection, right? So let's assume we want to do that. So we'll add the template to our global templates collection, right? Okay, so we do that. We can go to Word add-ins and we can do add, and it has 2 arguments. The first one is the file name. Well, that's just actually the file path. Again, for whatever reason, report has a space in it. You do have to keep that space or else it's not going to technically work, right? And then the second one is install. So install, obviously, if we set that to true, it will install that add-in to our global collection. And so if I run this, hopefully we don't get any errors. And if I go back here to my Word add-ins, you will now see it's been checked. So if it's checked, it's part of our global templates. Now this one's a little bit confusing because technically when I was writing my code, I actually had attached it and everything like that. So you might be going, well, Alex, it was already here. Yes, it was already there, but that's because I actually programmatically attached the template to my document. So anytime you attach it, even if it's not globally installed, it will still add it to your VB project pane. So just keep that in mind. Even if you see it here, does not necessarily mean it's globally available. To make it globally available, you have to add it to the add-ins collection. So just keep that in mind. It's a little bit confusing, I know, and trust me, I'm sure they could have made it easier. Okay, so we've now added this new template, right? So that's all great. The final thing we're going to talk about before going into the next subroutine is the concept of an attached template, right? So I can also set my Word template object to my Word doc, so the document that we're currently in, and every document has something called an attached template property. Now, you guessed it, this is actually the template that is currently being used inside your document. Now, normally, like 99.9% of the time, it's going to be this guy right here. It's going to be your normal.dotm, right? So that's your macro enable one. Well, I don't think it would be macro enabled if you've never actually written a macro for. I mean, I could be wrong, but if you're writing VBA code, it's going to be normal.dotm, but I'm sure for somebody else it may be a little bit different. But normally that's the one it is. And you can actually change it. So what you can do is you can actually attach a different template to it, and then you can do things like apply different styles to it and stuff like that. So here, what I'm doing is grabbing the attached template. Okay, that makes pretty good sense for the most part. And then what I'm going to do is, now that I have that attached template, print the name, right? So just nothing fancy. Just print the name, and then we'll do is debug print attached template name is space plus Word template dot name. Okay, let's see what we get when we do that. Okay, perfect. So right now it's not that one because, again, when I was actually writing this code, I did programmatically change it. So yes, it's not that one, but it's actually correct because I have changed it in the past. So that's fine. So now that we know how to access the attached template, most people would say, well, how do I change it? Well, let's create a new subroutine. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create that new subroutine. We'll call it changed attached template. Okay, that seems pretty straightforward. I'm going to to save some time, I'm just going to copy some variables that I already have. So we're just going to be working with our document again. We're going to be working with some of our other stuff, like our templates collection and stuff like that. And let's just assume maybe this time around, I want to use that blue spheres appointment calendar one, right? So let's assume that's the one we want to work with. Okay, so again, I'm going to actually take some stuff again and just copy some code. And because it's a property, we can set something equal to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it equal to that template path. So this is how you attach a template. You provide the path. Now, again, you can use a little bit of your imagination and guess how you would write a script to do this programmatically. But in essence, what you need to provide is the file path. So how you get that file path is up to you. But once you have it, you can attach it to the document. So once you've done that, this will change the attached template. Just because it changes the attached template does not mean the styles will actually be, reflected with this change. And so what you actually have to do next is you need to update the styles. Again, I kind of figured out this out the hard way, but you go into your document object and there is a property called update styles. And if you if you call that method, it will actually change it out. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, so for example, you can see like, okay, it's fancy stuff. So if I run this and cannot change document template. Why not? Oh, Lord. Let me do this. I don't think it's going to change it, but maybe it will. Odd. That's really odd. Okay. That could be part of the issue, I guess. Maybe that's what was causing some stuff up here. No, that was still installing it, but that's still a little bit odd. Okay, so for whatever reason, we cannot use this document when we are attaching the template. We can use active document, but we cannot use this document. Part of me is saying it probably has something to do with that duplicate component. So again, that might just be my system. I've changed things in the past, so it's completely conceivable that no one else will experience this but me. You can try this document and see what happens. And if you're good to go, you're good to go. If you don't and it doesn't work, just change it to active document and hopefully that fixes your error for you. Now, the important part was I wanted to show you that you can now see our content has actually changed. So now our styles have been reflective of the actual template that we're using. So again, just because you attach a template doesn't mean the styles have been updated to reflect that change. So what we're going to do next is we're going to work with an individual template object again. So kind of like what we were doing up here. And I'm just going to show you some more properties about that particular template and kind of just show you things like the type. We can just see that there's certain properties and stuff like that about it. Personally, I think just to kind of wrap up the video because it's kind of going a little bit long, I'll just copy the subroutine and I'll kind of just walk you through what's going on. I mean, for the most part, it's almost identical. So we're still declaring the same variables. So we still have our Word templates collection. We still have our Word template object and we still have our document. I'm trying to be consistent. I'll just stay with active document. And then basically what I do is I just take the attached template and I set that equal to my Word template object. And then what I do here is I print my template type. And so, for example, if you want to know if this template, for example, is a global template, then you can use the Word template.type property. And if it's 1, it's a global template. If it's 0, it's a normal default template. And then if it's 2, it's an attached template. So with this one, it should be an attached one. And then we can also see if spell checking is basically on with this particular template. So 0 is true, 1 is false. Again, that is the no proofing property. And then this one is just showing you how would you access that that VB project. You can see that with a VB project, you can have references, you can have VB components, so you could actually get the code modules and stuff like that. I'm not going into that much detail with templates. I have a whole other series that covers that, but it's just for you to know if you want to access that Visual Basic project component from the template object, you can, and you could manipulate different things. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. Okay, so template type is 1. I thought it was 2. It's not, it's 1. That kind of makes sense though, because I mean, it's a global template. We have installed it, so it should, I guess, in essence, this one is technically taking precedence over this one, if you think about it. And then spell checking on, okay, that's good. And then this is also showing us the VB project name. You can see right here, it's basically just the file itself and it's the file path. So nothing too fancy there. And then finally, all I have down here is open it as a document. And so if I open it, you can see we've now opened this as a document. So different things you could play around with if you wanted to. It's kind of up to you how you want to go about changing it, right? That's pretty much about it, I think, for templates at this point. I mean, there's sometimes finer, geez, I fell on my chair a little bit. There's sometimes finer details that you might have to take into consideration. So for example, working with styles, working with, just different building blocks and stuff like that. It can get a little bit complicated, but hopefully nothing too fancy. But yeah, at this point, if you got any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below, and I will, as always, try to get back to you. And then what's up next? Up next is we're going to talk about building blocks. So we're going to talk about building blocks inside of Word VBA, and that will do VBA for, no, actually tomorrow. I'm supposed to be recording some too. Tomorrow I'm going to be trying to do connection objects in Excel, and then I have another user form series I was going to do too. So that's going to be showing you how to access components that by default you might not be able to see from VBA, but you can actually access them. You just got to be a little bit tricky, and you can then access those components. And so really what it's doing is it's just giving you more control over how you build your user form. So it's kind of neat. And then after that, I'm going to go back into SQL a little bit. So we're going to talk about pivot, unpivot. We're going to talk about dynamic pivoting. So creating queries that will pivot basically dynamically the number of rows that appear. And then we're going to talk about JSON a little bit in SQL. And then we're going to talk about XML. And then we're going to talk about cross join. And then I think we're going to talk about merge. And I think that's it for a little bit on SQL. And then JavaScript, the API. I've been working on an add-in, so we're going to see how to build an add-in. Fun stuff. All right, but yeah, so that's kind of just what's coming up down the road. So thank you again for watching, everybody. As always, we will see you in the next video.